So I am doing one final step in between the wash and the oiling of this beautiful deck because of something that I saw that history has told me is a good thing to be proactive about. And that is a slight fuzz, or a furring people sometimes call it, that can appear on wood of all types that is chemically stripped. A lot of times this doesn't matter that much. On softwoods especially, kind of lighter decks, cedar, pressure treated, you can stain it, oil it, do whatever you need to do, and oftentimes that little bit of fuzziness, that furring, it doesn't matter all that much. But you have a deck like this with such an exquisite grain pattern, you really want to show it off. Another thing about exotic hardwoods, Ipe especially in general, that can really get messy is that fuzz can take a yellow hue. And then if your stain does not have enough pigmentation, if you just go with kind of a natural amber or reddish oil, if it's not in the brown spectrum, those yellow fibers can look like moss or mold or something organic growing on your freshly oiled deck, which is horrible to see. It's happened to me, and I've totally redone decks because of that. So that was a lesson I learned once, and now it's something I know to look for. But I'm going to show you how to get rid of it very easily. I have my Festool set up, and this is a section where you can just very noticeably see what I've sanded, the lower half, versus what I haven't, the upper half. So let me just show you how easy this is to do. I am using 80 grit granite here on the ETS 150/5. Technically, this is more seen as a finish sander, but I find it packs a good punch, and I use it for exterior stuff a lot. You will notice I am going totally perpendicular to the grain, and that's because I found it was a more effective way to knock the fuzz down on boards without over sanding the edges. And I did finish with the grain after all the fuzz was gone, but you can see how easy this is, how quickly it happens. It is worth the extra effort. Okay, we have finally arrived. This deck is perfectly clean, it is perfectly stripped. Now it's sanded, and the weather is great, so I'm going for it. A little bit of talk about products and why I'm doing it this way. I'm choosing Super Deck, the transparent oil in Canyon Brown on this one. I only use penetrating oils on exotic hardwoods. Good reason for that is what you saw me do to get here. All of that stripping, all of that failed film forming finish doesn't agree with exotic hardwoods especially, but often it's not a great idea for decking anything flat that's going to get walked on moisture. Here, the Sikkens, this Prolux, it's a fine choice for vertical window trim that's not going to have that wear pattern. It's still a bit of a liability, but it is something you can maintain. But for these decks, this wood is not going to take much oil, so what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit. We're not going to let it pool. We're going to let it absorb, and that's done. The maintenance for this is going to be annual. But the nice thing is, the maintenance is going to be easy because you're not going to have really anything failing above the surface of the wood because that oil is going in it. You're going to have some dirt, maybe a little bit of mildew, and you're going to wash that off, and then you're going to lightly reapply. So getting to this point, very difficult sometimes, but maintaining it, very easy. It's often a thing that I hand off to homeowners, and they like to do it themselves because it's a very easy and rewarding and DIY friendly project. But enough with that. What I am using, I'm going to be cutting with a Picasso, a chisel. That's going to be cutting over here. I've already done the perimeter boards from a ladder on the outside. This board was just kind of a sample, so that's done already. And then I am going to, for the big flats, I have this big beefy arrow-worthy Olympian hooked up to a pole so that I don't have to hunch over. I can just do everything from a standing position. But let me show you how cool it is to watch this stuff go into the wood. I'm just going to pick off a little short thing for you. Now this stuff, it will lap if you let it. So you want to do just a few boards at a time and not overlap too much if you're not going to come back to it soon. Some people like using stain pads for wood like this. I've never tried it, but I trust that it works pretty well. Again, the overwhelming goal here is to not leave too much on the surface. Anything that pools or puddles is going to probably turn into a slightly tacky spot that you might have to deal with chemically when it dries. Reason for that is these oils in here, unlike the Sikkens products, they are not meant to form a film. There's not enough solids in there for it to turn into anything really hard. So it's just gonna remain kind of tacky if it doesn't have a home to dry in. I am going to set this up as a time lapse, and then you can see me do this entire deck with the standing brush mostly, and it's gonna look awesome, so stick around. Alright, so here I've done the cuts and the part behind the chimney, and now I am in the open rows just smooth sailing with the 6-inch brush on the extension and a comically small cut bucket for this. I don't honestly remember why this was the case, but it was. In a perfect world and normally I would be using a 2-gallon bucket. And okay, we're over here now. We are over cutting in the railing. As you can see, I'm doing that before I do the final walkout. That is just because when I'm backing myself out on 3 boards it's gonna be, I don't like to be bending over a railing and messing with all that. I just like a simple back out procedure. As you can see, where I have the opportunity, I was really brushing it out well, the full length of the deck after application. I don't have that luxury backing myself out, but I'm really working it in carefully. And one last little piece, and we are done with that section. Okay, I want to do a quick outro for this deck project after it has dried for a few days in beautiful windy 70s conditions. It just looks spectacular. And let's see if the camera will really focus on this grain pattern. Yeah, so what you want is really to be able to go like this and have no oily residue on your hand. If there's a little bit of an oily sheen, you might have over applied a little bit, and you can just buff that off with some rags, but wait a day or two of good drying conditions before you do that. If you get moisture on it within 24 hours, oftentimes that's not a deal breaker. It'll bead up and it should be able to dry without watermarking. So this, once you get to this stage, it is a pretty durable system. But let's just have one last look at how this ended up. And from the other way, these boards are just heavenly. So yeah, this one was an awesome turnaround. My only wish is that I could see the client's face when they see this for the first time. I'm not actually sure they've ever seen this deck like this in the entire 15 years. So yeah, that's gonna be some great feedback to get. And yeah, thanks for tuning in for this whole deck saga.